What happens when someone confesses a 20-year lie on live television and even Dr. Phil is left speechless? Stop the tape. Stop it right now. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the studio like a knife. His hand shot up, freezing every camera operator mid-motion. The woman in the guest chair clutched a sealed envelope, her entire body trembling. I can't let you open that on air, Dr. Phil said, his voice dropping to something none of the 200 audience members had ever heard from him before. Not until we talk about what you just told me. What she had just confessed would change everything, for her son, for the audience, and for Dr. Phil himself. 6 weeks earlier, a production assistant had flagged an email that came through the show's submission portal. Subject line: I've been living a lie for 20 years to protect my son. He deserves to know the truth. The email was from Linda Morrison, a 52-year-old woman from Ohio who had raised her son Michael as a single mother after his father's death in a car accident when Michael was 3 years old. But that wasn't the whole story. The producers did their preliminary research. Linda had indeed raised Michael alone. He was now 23, working as a paramedic, engaged to be married. Model citizen. Close relationship with his mother. Nothing seemed unusual. Until they started digging into the accident report from 1999. There was no accident report. There was no death certificate for Michael's father under the name Linda had provided. There was, however, something else. Something that made the senior producer immediately forward the case to Dr. Phil's personal review. Linda Morrison's husband, Michael's biological father, wasn't dead. He was alive. And he was in prison, serving a 25-year sentence for attempted murder. Not of a stranger. Of Linda herself. Dr. Phil had reviewed thousands of cases over his career, but this one made him pause. He read Linda's full submission 3 times. She had survived her husband's attack, obtained a restraining order, changed her and her son's last names, and told Michael his father had died in a car accident to spare him the trauma of knowing his dad had tried to kill his mom. For 20 years she had lived with this lie. For 20 years she had protected her son from the truth. But now Michael's father was up for parole. And Linda knew that the moment he was released, her son would find out everything. She wanted to tell him first. She wanted Dr. Phil's help to do it. The production team prepared for the taping with unusual care. Dr. Phil personally called Linda 3 days before the show. I need you to understand something, he told her. When we do this, there's no going back. Michael will know everything. Are you absolutely certain you're ready for that? Linda's voice was steady through the phone. Dr. Phil, I've carried this alone for 2 decades. Michael deserves the truth before his father walks out of that prison and shows up at our door. The day of the taping, Michael Morrison arrived at the studio believing he was there to discuss his mother's anxiety issues. He had no idea what was actually about to unfold. Linda sat in the green room, the sealed envelope in her hands. Inside were 2 letters. One she had written to Michael explaining everything, and one his father had written from prison, a letter Linda had intercepted 6 months earlier when it arrived at their home. Dr. Phil walked into the green room 20 minutes before taping. He sat across from Linda, his usual commanding presence softened. Linda, I want you to know something. What you did, protecting your son, that came from love. But what we're about to do in there is going to hurt him. It's going to hurt bad. Are you ready to hold him through that? Linda nodded, tears already forming. I've been ready for 20 years. Dr. Phil leaned forward. Then let's make sure we do this right. The show opened with Michael on stage, confused but trusting. Dr. Phil started gently, asking about his childhood, his relationship with his mother, his memories of his father. Michael spoke fondly of the few memories he had. Vague images of a man who used to carry him on his shoulders, bedtime stories, a laugh he could barely remember. Michael, Dr. Phil said after 10 minutes of warm-up, your mother asked to be here today because there's something she needs to tell you. Something she's been carrying for a very long time. Linda walked onto the stage. Michael smiled, still unaware. She sat in the chair next to him, the envelope gripped so tightly her knuckles were white. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Dr. Phil turned to Linda. Tell him what you told me. Linda's voice cracked immediately. Michael, sweetheart, your father didn't die in a car accident. Michael's smile faded. Confusion replaced it. What do you mean? Your father is alive. He's been alive this whole time. The studio went completely silent. Even the audience seemed to stop breathing. Michael stared at his mother, his brain trying to process words that made no sense. What are you talking about? His voice rose slightly. Mom, what are you saying? Dr. Phil leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Michael, I need you to listen to your mother. This is going to be hard, but she needs to tell you the truth. Linda's tears came in full force now. When you were 3 years old, your father tried to kill me. He attacked me in our home while you were sleeping upstairs. I barely survived. He went to prison for attempted murder. And I told you he died because I didn't want you to grow up knowing that your father tried to take your mother away from you. Michael's face transformed through a dozen emotions in 5 seconds: confusion, disbelief, horror, anger, betrayal. You lied to me? His voice cracked. For 20 years you lied to me? I was protecting you. Protecting me? Michael stood up, his paramedic training the only thing keeping him from completely unraveling. You let me believe my father was dead. You let me grieve someone who was alive. How is that protecting me? Dr. Phil stood up with them. Michael, I need you to hear something. No. Michael's voice filled the studio. No, I need a minute. He turned away from his mother, his hands going to his head. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. What happened next was something producers would talk about for years. Dr. Phil didn't comfort Michael. He didn't offer platitudes. Instead, he turned to Linda with a look that made even the most seasoned crew members uncomfortable. Linda, Dr. Phil said, his voice dropping to that register he reserved for the hardest truths. I need you to tell him the rest. Linda's face went white. Dr. Phil, I don't think. No, Linda. He needs to hear it all. Right now. Dr. Phil's hand cut through the air. You didn't just lie about his father being dead. Tell him what's in that envelope. Michael spun around. What's in the envelope? Linda was shaking so hard she could barely hold it. Michael, your father, he wrote you a letter. 6 months ago. It came to our house. I kept it from you. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. Stop the tape, Dr. Phil said suddenly. The cameras kept rolling, but he waved his hand more forcefully. I said stop the tape. The red recording lights went dark. The audience murmured in confusion. Dr. Phil walked directly to Michael, putting himself between mother and son. He spoke so quietly that even the front row couldn't hear. The microphones picked up fragments. Not about what she did, about what happens next. Your father gets out in 3 months. Decide right now if you read that letter. The conversation lasted 2 full minutes. Michael's shoulders shook. Dr. Phil's hand rested firmly on the young man's shoulder. Linda sat in her chair, dissolving into tears. Finally, Dr. Phil turned back to the cameras and production booth. Bring them back up. We're going live. The cameras came back to life. Dr. Phil addressed the audience directly, something he rarely did mid-show. Folks, what you're watching right now is real. This family is making a decision that will affect the rest of their lives. Michael has a choice to make. He can read his father's letter now, or he can wait. Linda has a choice to make. She can keep protecting her son from the truth, or she can let him face it as an adult. He turned back to Michael. What do you want to do? Michael looked at the envelope in his mother's hands. 20 seconds passed. The silence was excruciating. I want to read it, Michael said finally. But not here. Not on camera. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Dr. Phil nodded. Then we're going to take a break. Linda, Michael, I want you both to come with me. Backstage. Right now. He looked at the audience. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Dr. Phil led them off stage through the wings, into a private room behind the set. He closed the door. For the first time in the show's history, the audience sat in complete silence for the entire break, unsure if the show would even continue. Inside that room, Michael opened the envelope with shaking hands. Dr. Phil sat across from them, not as a host, but as a clinician. Linda watched her son read the words his father had written, words claiming remorse, words asking for forgiveness, words requesting to meet his son after release. Michael read for 3 minutes. Then he set the letter down. He looked at his mother with eyes that were simultaneously broken and resolute. Why now? He asked quietly. Why tell me now? Linda's answer was simple and devastating. Because in 3 months he gets out. And I'd rather you hear it from me than from him showing up at your door. Dr. Phil leaned forward. Michael, your mother made a choice 20 years ago. Maybe it wasn't the right choice. Maybe it was. But she made it out of love. The question now is, what choice are you going to make? Michael looked at the letter again. Then at his mother. I don't know yet. That's okay. Dr. Phil said. You don't have to know right now. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. They returned to the stage. The audience erupted in applause, not of entertainment, but of support. Michael sat down, his mother beside him. Dr. Phil remained standing. Michael, Dr. Phil said, I've been doing this for a long time. And I've seen a lot of families torn apart by secrets. But I've also seen families rebuilt by truth. Your mother kept a secret to protect you. She's telling you now to prepare you. That's not betrayal. That's love. Michael's voice was hoarse. But she lied to me for 20 years. Yes, she did, Dr. Phil agreed. And now she's telling you the truth. The question is, what are you going to do with it? The conversation continued for another 20 minutes. Dr. Phil brought in a family trauma specialist who had been standing by. Resources were provided, therapists who specialize in family trauma, support groups for adult children of violent parents, legal advice for obtaining restraining orders. By the end of the show, Michael hadn't forgiven his mother. But he hadn't walked away either. They sat side by side, both broken, both trying to figure out what came next. The aftermath was profound. 2 weeks after the taping, Linda called Dr. Phil's production team. Michael had agreed to family therapy. They were working through it. He had decided not to contact his father when he was released, but he wanted to be prepared in case his father contacted him. 6 months later. After his father's release, Michael sent an update. His father had attempted to reach out. Michael had filed for a restraining order. He and his mother were still in therapy, but they were closer than they'd been in years. Dr. Phil told me that truth is painful but necessary, Michael wrote in his email. He was right. I'm still angry at my mom for lying. But I understand why she did it. And I'm grateful she finally told me the truth before it was too late. Dr. Phil kept that email in his desk drawer. On difficult days, when cases seemed insurmountable, he would read it to remind himself why he did this work. The lesson that day had been brutal but clear. Love sometimes wears the face of lies. But truth, no matter how painful, is the only foundation for real healing. Linda had protected her son with deception for 2 decades. Dr. Phil had helped her protect him with truth. And in that private room, away from cameras and audiences, a family had begun the long journey of rebuilding on a foundation of honesty instead of fear. The envelope, the letters, the 20-year lie, it had all led to this moment. Not a perfect resolution, but a real one. The kind of messy, complicated, painful truth that actually changes lives. And Dr. Phil, who had stopped the tape and broken his own show's protocols to give a family privacy in their most vulnerable moment, had reminded everyone watching why some stories are too important to be treated as just entertainment. They're human. They're real. And they're the reason he's been doing this for over 2 decades, to help people face the truths they've been running from, and to find the courage to rebuild what those truths have broken.